They fined me because my car had dust on it. You heard that right. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, the desert. Dust is basically the state flower here. But my HOA decided my 4Runner was too dirty for their precious driveway standards. They said it diminishes the community aesthetic. Meanwhile, the HOA president's Mercedes sits in his garage like it's made of gold. He's the one sending violation letters every week like my 4Runner's dust is personally offending him. First they told me to wash it twice a week. Then, to keep it in the garage, except my garage isn't a garage anymore. It's a home gym, a gear room, and a workspace. I live here, I use my space, but they didn't care. When I refused to turn my life upside down for a few specks of dust, they sent another letter. $50 daily fines begin in 14 days. That's when I realized this wasn't about the dust. It was about control. So I decided to fight back, not with anger, but with their own rules, and by the time it was over, the HOA president's perfect Mercedes wasn't the one everyone admired anymore. It was the punchline of the entire neighborhood asterisk. I've lived in this quiet Scottsdale townhouse community for 2 years now. It's supposed to be peaceful. Palm trees lining the streets, adobe-colored walls, the smell of sunscreen and desert wind. But lately, it feels like I'm living inside a reality show called Keeping Up with the HOA. The rules here are typical. No unregistered vehicles, no loud music, no commercial signs. I follow them all. I've never caused a problem. But apparently, my biggest crime is owning a dusty car in the middle of Arizona. My 2019 Toyota 4Runner white. Strong, and always ready for the next camping trip, is my pride. It's not just a car. It's my escape vehicle. The moment Friday hits, I throw my gear in the back, head to Sedona, or find some remote trail where the stars feel close enough to touch. But when you drive through red dust and desert wind, your car doesn't stay showroom clean. It gets Arizona clean, a thin layer of desert honesty. Last week, that honesty got me in trouble. When I came home from a weekend trip, there it was, a bright yellow envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. Violation notice. Vehicle condition. I laughed, thinking it had to be a mistake. But when I opened it, my smile faded. Your vehicle is excessively dirty and creates an eyesore that diminishes community aesthetic standards. You are required to maintain your vehicle in a presentably clean condition or store it in your garage. I stared at it, half amused, half offended. Excessively dirty? It had dust. Everything in Arizona has dust. Even the sky looks dusty here. Still, I played along. I washed the car that same day. It gleamed under the sun like a pearl in the desert. Problem solved, I thought. 3 days later, I got another letter. Second violation. Continued non-compliance with community standards. Fines of $50 day may apply after 14 days. I hadn't even driven the car since washing it, but a small dust storm had rolled through over the weekend. That's life in Scottsdale. I wiped a finger across the hood. A faint line of desert powder followed my hand. That was all it took for them to declare war. That night, I sat in my garage, or what used to be a garage. Now it's my gym, my workshop, my storage for all the things that make my life mine. Bikes, hiking gear, camping supplies. There's barely room to walk, let alone fit a 4Runner. So when they said, just park it inside, it wasn't an option. I sent an email to the HOA office the next morning. Please show me where in the community rules it specifies how often a vehicle must be washed. I see no such clause in the vehicle and parking section. They replied 2 hours later, curt and smug. Your vehicle falls under general aesthetic standards, which require all properties and visible items to be well maintained and visually appealing. I wrote back immediately. A dusty car isn't unmaintained. It's just dusty. We live in a desert. Their next reply came from the HOA president himself, Mr. Clean Mercedes. You know the type. Pressed polos, cologne, that costs more than your monthly gas bill, and a smile so fake it creaks. We have received complaints from other residents that your vehicle appears neglected. Please comply with community standards or park it inside your garage. I looked out the window at my 4Runner parked neatly. License current, tires new, not a dent on it. Neglected? That car has seen more sunsets than most people in this neighborhood have seen the inside of a trail. I took a deep breath. I didn't want to escalate things, so I washed it again. For 2 days. It looked perfect. Then came another dust storm, and another violation notice. This time, I didn't laugh. This time, I got angry. I went to the next HOA board meeting. Picture this, a bland conference room, folding chairs, bad coffee, and 6 board members sitting like royalty behind a plastic table. The president was at the center, arms crossed, smug grin ready. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up. I'm here about these violation notices regarding my vehicle. I began. I've complied, washed it multiple times, and it still gets dusty because he cut me off. Because you're not taking our standards seriously. I stared at him. Your standards? Or your personal opinion of what a clean car looks like? A few homeowners in the back chuckled quietly. He didn't like that. His face tightened. He leaned forward. Sir, this isn't about opinions. It's about maintaining the visual harmony of the community. Visual harmony. I repeated. We live in a desert, not a car dealership. Dust is natural. You can't find nature. He sighed dramatically. Look, the rule is simple. Keep it presentably clean or keep it out of sight. Maybe invest in a car cover. That's when I realized this was personal. He didn't care about aesthetic harmony. He just didn't like my lifestyle. The dirt, the camping, the gear, the freedom. It didn't fit his perfect image of a country club neighborhood. I left the meeting fuming. When I got home, another email had already arrived. Final notice. Non-compliance will result in daily fines beginning next week. That's when something snapped. I opened the HOA bylaws, all 67 pages of them, and started reading like a man possessed. Line by line, clause by clause. I highlighted every mention of vehicles, maintenance, and aesthetic rules. And that's when I saw something interesting. There was nothing, not a single line about personal vehicles being subject to aesthetic judgment. Only property structures and landscaping fell under that rule. Vehicles were specifically governed by a separate section, and that section only required them to be operational, registered, and insured. My 4Runner met all those conditions perfectly. I sat back and smiled for the first time in days. If they wanted to play by the rules, fine, I'd play better, but I wasn't going to just defend myself. No, I was going to prove how ridiculous their standards really were. Because if my dusty 4Runner was an eyesore, wait till the neighborhood saw what neglected really looked like. When I found that clause in the HOA rules, something inside me shifted. All the frustration, the fines, the fake smiles, they suddenly became fuel. They wanted to play power games. Fine, I was going to make them regret ever writing the word aesthetic. The next morning, I took my 4Runner for a quick drive down a nearby dirt road, not to dirty it on purpose, but just enough to make a point. When I got home, it looked like what it was. A vehicle meant for life. Not a display case. Then, I took photos, front, back, side, and close-ups. In every picture, the car looked clean enough by any sane person's standard. After that, I attached those photos to an email addressed to the HOA board, CCing every homeowner on the community mailing list. Subject line, clarification request, vehicle appearance. Violation rule inconsistency, noted the email read, Dear board members, I've reviewed the community bylaws in full and found no section that places aesthetic standards on personal vehicles, only on property structures and landscaping. Section 8.3 clearly states that vehicles must be operational, registered, and insured, all of which my 4Runner meets. I've attached current photos for your review. Given this, please clarify whether the HOA is now expanding aesthetic judgment to vehicles, and if so, whether the board voted to amend the bylaws accordingly. Kindly respond within 5 business days, as I intend to escalate this to the Arizona Department of Real Estate HOA Dispute Resolution Office if no clarification is received. Best regards. Your name. I hit send. Then I sat back and waited. The email spread like wildfire. By that evening, my neighbors were talking. Some knocked on my door to laugh, others to complain about their own petty fines. A flower pot the wrong color, a wind chime too loud, a garden hose not neatly coiled. Turns out, everyone had a story. The HOA had been quietly bullying people for years, and no one had fought back. Until now. 3 days later, the HOA president sent his reply, short, defensive, and dripping with arrogance. Your vehicle remains in violation of community standards under the General Aesthetic Clause. The board stands by its decision. He signed it with his full name, title, and unintentionally his ego. I smiled. Perfect. He just confirmed in writing that they were enforcing a rule that didn't legally apply to vehicles. Time for phase 2. Asterisk. Printed his email and highlighted the part where he cited the wrong clause. Then I went a step further, using Arizona's HOA statute database. Thank you, Google. I found that any HOA enforcement not explicitly listed in the bylaws is considered invalid and unenforceable. Without a membership vote, I wrote another email, this time not to him, but to the entire community, attaching his statement and the state law. It appears the HOA president has been enforcing aesthetic restrictions on personal vehicles without proper legal authority. Arizona HOA Statute 331803 states that all enforceable rules must be explicitly defined in the governing documents or approved by a majority vote of members. No such rule exists. If you've received fines under general aesthetic standards, those fines are unenforceable. You may request refunds or formal reversals of record. I encourage everyone to review their past notices and request transparency from the board. That email hit harder than a dust storm. Within hours, my inbox exploded with replies. Neighbors were furious. Some had been fined for mailbox paint shades, others for dusty patio furniture. The board's credibility cracked overnight. And then came the cherry on top. One of my neighbors, a retired attorney, emailed me privately. I read your note. You're right. The HOA can't legally enforce those fines. Want to make this official? Oh, I wanted to make it official. Asterisk. The next HOA meeting was standing room only. People who hadn't shown up in years were there, clutching their own violation letters like evidence at a trial. The president looked nervous for the first time, a sheen of sweat glistening on his spotless forehead. He started with the usual speech. Thank you for attending. We're here to maintain our community's beauty and order. I stood up Actually, we're here to discuss why you've been enforcing non-existent rules. The room went dead silent. I walked to the front and placed a printed copy of the bylaws on the table. Then another, the Arizona statute, and finally, his own email, highlighted in bright yellow. This, I said, tapping the page, is your written confirmation that you've been fining residents under a rule that doesn't legally apply to vehicles? According to state law, that's a violation of your own governing authority. He tried to speak. Best not, I cut him off. You've been demanding we wash our cars twice a week while your Mercedes sits spotless in your private garage. You said our cars diminish the community aesthetic, but what really diminishes this community is abuse of power. A murmur ran through the crowd. Neighbors nodded. A few even clapped quietly. Then my attorney neighbor stood up. I'd like to motion for an immediate board review under Article 9.1, Leadership Misconduct and Misuse of Authority. The president's face turned pale. You can't. But it was too late. Another homeowner seconded the motion, and when the vote came, it wasn't even close. By a show of hands, the board voted 5-1 to suspend the president pending investigation. The room erupted, half cheering, half laughing. Someone actually shouted, "Guess your Mercedes isn't shiny enough to hide this mess." Over the next 2 weeks, an independent review confirmed everything. The general aesthetic fines had been applied inconsistently and illegally. Residents who'd paid those fines were issued refunds. New board elections were scheduled. The president, the same man who tried to shame me over dust, was forced to resign, and when he did, the community Facebook page lit up with memes of 4Runners covered in dust and captions like, "Scottsdale chic." As for me, I got an apology letter from the HOA office. No fines, no violations, just a quiet acknowledgement that they'd revised enforcement guidelines, and my 4Runner, still parked proudly in the driveway, dust and all. But the best part came a week later. The new board decided to host a community cleanup day to rebuild goodwill. I showed up not to clean cars, but to help plant succulents by the clubhouse. The new president, a friendly woman with a sense of humor, smiled at me and said, "Glad you came, Dust Commander." Everyone laughed. Even I did. Because by then, the whole neighborhood knew. I wasn't the guy with the dirty car. I was the guy who cleaned house. They tried to fine me for dessert dust, but in the end, it was their own dirt that brought them down.